Can you hear me now? If you can get in this one, please let me know if you can hear me. You can hear me? Tell me if you can hear me. You know, listen, you guys. Um, Sometimes it just doesn't go that smoothly. You know what I mean? I have a tiny little lunchbox with some beers in it because I don't want to have to get up and walk away. I'm going to be drinking Hellas tonight. And after all that nonsense, I'm going to get this thing poured. Up the hill, Munich Hellas, Cartridge Brewing. And I'm pouring it into my fancy new US Beer Open glass here. I don't know if this cup holds a pint. I think it does. How about that? All right. I wanted it to be a lot smoother. All right. I figured I have everything all set. It shouldn't have been difficult, but for some reason, it was. I see Maggie's drinking a Miller, a little Miller Light in the chat, man. Good for you, Maggie. It's Friday, girl. Do your thing. You know. I feel like I had a few more people on that other stream. First of all, I forgot I needed to be in Chrome to do this, and I wasn't in Chrome, and I'm on my new laptop, and so the whole thing is a thing. But let's get down to it. That's not why you're here. You're here for a little quality time. You're here for a little affirmation. You know what I mean? So let's get into it. Hopefully everybody had a good week. It's been about a month since we've done one of these. To be honest, I really like doing this, especially if I can get over that initial stress of trying to make something work. But it appears we are in the clear. Once again, a little Hellas in the glass. I just refilmed some things for an episode on Up the Hill, which is our Munich Hellas. That'll be cool. I'm playing with different like ways of releasing stuff. Andy, my editor, put together like over an hour of footage for our IPA called Sabo. And there's just tons of footage there. And so we chunked it up and kind of broke it into 15 chapters. We're going to see how that works. I feel like if I drop something, over an hour like that, quite frankly, it'll just get killed as far as viewership, clicks, the whole thing. You're trying to like walk this line between having like content the way you want it and content the way people will be willing to watch it. Not everybody's going to click on that 66-minute video, right? But the good news is once this whole Sabo episode is rolled out, it's in a playlist, and then you can just roll through and binge that if you want. So anyways, as far as the channel goes, some really cool stuff. Dude, we're getting really close to 1,200 subs. Something that I didn't realize until I started looking at it. It's easy to maybe get a little caught up in wanting the channel to do well, wanting to make good content, and kind of trying to force the issue. But something crazy that I looked up, it's like 8% of all YouTube channels have 1,000 subs. We're over that line. Obviously, I would love to grow that thing more. In some videos, I request that people, spread the channel. If you're enjoying the channel, you know, let another brewer loving person. Sometimes I say brewer loving, and that's not exactly where I want to be with that. But anyways, brewer loving. I mean, you know, if they're your spouse, they're your partner. You know what I mean? If there's a connection, sure, love them. I just realized I panicked a little bit. I looked at the chat. It appears as if you can all still hear me. This makes me feel good. But please do suggest to friends, especially if you're attached to a homebrew club. If you have a local homebrew shop that you really like, if you're up on that Reddit, post it up on Reddit, son. Let them know. Okay? Spread that good word. We have upcoming stuff. I have a video coming up this month on us starting to do cell counts. It's kind of like the real super beginner's guide because that's where I am in learning that process. I've been bouncing stuff off of my buddy Rocky Van Meter. If you haven't watched the live stream that we did with him, treat it like a podcast. It's like 2 hours. Make it your commute. Listen and work your way through it, man. I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully there's some value to you of being able to listen. Just a couple of guys, obviously we're friends, but you know, just a couple of guys really talking about you know, beer stuff they're passionate about, stuff like that. So that one was a lot of fun. So please get on and watch that one. We talk lots of good stuff. We talk brewing lager, hef, Belgian beers, kind of tasting the whole philosophy thing. That one was a lot of fun for me. That was one where you kind of forget that, you know, you have a computer in front of you and you're, you know, I don't know, like trying to do a thing, right? You're just enjoying conversation. But upcoming stuff, like I said, cell count, the Rockney video just dropped. That Sabo series that we're rolling through right now, and I am lining up some more pro interviews. And I don't know, we're going to kind of see how it goes from there. Please give me feedback on what you are thinking about these different format things that you're seeing, what you enjoy, because ultimately that's what we want to be producing for you guys. New stuff for the channel. I am hoping in the coming month, I want to get a website up. I want to maybe get some merch in line, some t-shirts. I don't know where you live, but it might be hoodie season sooner than you think. T-shirts, hoodies, just with that logo, that sweet little, I don't know, I had to do it on top of my head. This sweet little fermenter AM beer logo, some stuff like that. There might be some other things that we throw in there. We'll probably do the kind of print on demand thing. So we'll be checking that out. And I'm also looking at starting a Patreon as well. So those are things I'm hoping to be able to get off the ground over the next couple months. I do want to be able to offer deeper levels of content for people that are, you know, obviously supportive through things like Patreon and things like that. And it'll actually help me give me an opportunity to do more stuff with this too, right? So we all know how the world works. But anyways, what else do we have going on? We do have our Discord, which is just getting off the ground. At some point, I've got a couple of guys that are going to work on moderating for me and kind of fleshing that whole thing out because I'm new to it. I'm 45. I just turned 45. That's my birthday face. And I don't know how to do these things. All right. So, yeah, I'm learning. So I'm learning with Discord as well. But I've got some guys that are probably going to be giving me a hand out in there. At some point, that Discord, we want to build that a little bit, and that might be something that becomes one of the Patreon benefits, maybe early video release, stuff like that. So, anyways, it's kind of what we want to have going on. I have I don't know. I've got a fair amount of questions lined up. which is pretty cool. Wide range of source. Some of them are from our Discord channel. Some are from Instagram. Some are from YouTube. Um, you know, yeah. So we'll start digging into those. Um, and also, hey to everybody in the chat. We're bumping up a few more people. Hola, Marco. Stuart is from Australia, and that blows my mind. Um, Maybe it is because I'm 45. It's wild to be doing something like this and have people from all over the place. Sydney, Australia here. Been watching all your videos. Great work. Keep it up. Starting to open a brewery, and you offer good insights. What you're really going to find out in this whole live stream is really going to be is just me reading compliments. I won't do that. But thank you very much, man. That's awesome. I've received so much positive feedback from people in that very situation. It's almost wild how many people hit me up and say, I'm opening something new. I either want to get into the industry, which makes sense, but a lot of people out there are opening up their own thing, and man, that's really exciting. And if anything, what I would love for this channel to be, and this community we're building, I want it to be that thing that kind of I necessarily didn't have. For me, it was my buddy Bill Gerds, who at the time was at Arbor Brewing, and he allowed me to come down there and shadow with him. I figured this is a medium, right? This video medium is a way that I can get the best information that I know, right? Not that I'm flawless or anything like that, but it's like I'm working, I'm grinding, I'm trying to get better, and I will show you all the things that I'm doing. And if it can help get you into an industry, if it can just give you enjoyment watching that work be done, picking things up like that, man. But if there's any benefit it can do for your career or for your business, man, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's really exciting to me. So please do hit me up with those questions. I believe my email is attached, but you can send questions through YouTube and my Instagram as well. I'm Adam Makes Beer on Instagram as well. So speaking of Instagram, I did just get an invitation to join the Illuminati. They told me one of the things that qualified me was my manual dexterity. So watch yourself. But you are not here for my banter. You're here for some sweet Q&A goodness. So I had a question topic come through through Discord. Shoot, I forgot to copy the name down of it, and I wanted to drop the name right here. But one of the fellas in Discord posted some pictures of barrels at Cantillon, and years ago, and it might be 10 years ago, me and two buddies of mine went for a long weekend in Belgium. And I told them that, seeing those brought back memories, and I said I had a story about it, and so that's what I'm going to open up with today. So me and a couple of buddies just went to Belgium for a long weekend, and I was really fortunate. A friend of mine gifted the trip to me. It wasn't something that I could afford to do, and then my other buddy at the time, he was single, was doing pretty well for himself. And, he's a work from home guy. And I shouldn't do air quotes. I mean, he works from home. Come on. He's a work from home guy. And I hit him up. I'm like, hey, listen, we're going to Europe in a month. We're not going to museums. We're not sightseeing. We're going to drink specific beers. And like, this is a mission. So we did that. Anyways, 1 month later, we land in Brussels and get to the hotel, and there's the temptation, like, maybe crash or whatever, but we're like, we're here. We just have to keep going. So we get a cab and we try to get them to take us to Cantillon, and they don't know really what we're talking about. And we're talking about drinking beer, and they're confused. And then finally the guy's like, do you mean the museum? Because it's a brewery slash museum at this point. And it was kind of like outlandish to the taxi driver that we were going there to drink that beer, and that we had like flown to that country really to drink that beer, but explicitly West Veteran after that. So anyways, we get to Cantillon, and at that time, man, I was listening to tons of Brewing Network, and they had this amazing interview with Jean Benoit, the brewmaster there. And dude, it fired me up. So I'm a history major. I taught history for 10 years, and you go into that spot, and it's like this old like barn type building, right? Anyways, the interview on Brewing Network, they have Jean Benoit, and Justin's asking him, well, is there pressure to produce this beer faster? Because it's a very long process. So like creating goose, which is a blend of two lambics, a young and an old. Usually the young is 1 year and the old is 3 year. And it is the young that will have the residual sugar in it necessary to make a carbonated beer in the bottle, and that is their goose. Um, and John Manuel was like, we have to defend our goose. We have to defend our tradition, right? And dude, like our hair on the arms stand up, like it fires me up. So, anyways, we go there, we get to Cantillon, and usually people just do. You can like do a self-guided tour. They give you a booklet, and you get your two pours. And they're in little wine glasses. They're like 5-ounce pours, and usually people have those two pours and leave. Well, we are drinking through the menu, right? I mean, we flew across an ocean, and it really was a goal of ours. Like we were trying to we didn't want to go and just like overdrink and lose the experience, right? We're going for those beers, so we are trying to be relatively moderate and whatnot. So we're tasting through this menu and whatever, and the service is awesome. We have the woman who's helping us with the beers, super friendly. I can't pronounce some of the names of some of the beers, of course, and so I apologize. And then she says, that's okay. I can't say it the way you say. And it was very laid back. It was very nice. And we were very much an outlier, right? Like we've been here now for like hours. And anyhow, I see Jean Benoit and I want to talk to him. And it's very much like this high school scene where there is some girl that I want to be able to try to talk to or whatever, but I don't have the nerve, right? And my two buddies told me, listen, you just flew across an ocean. You need to go over there and talk to this man. So I go up to him and I'm like, hey, my name is Adam. I'm a brewer from the United States. I just want to tell you how special to me that this place is, the beers, and I'm just, gushing. And then I quote him to him that like defending our goose thing, whatever, our history. And then like he blushes a little bit, but then like he fires up some and he's like, yeah, and so we chat a little bit. And then as we're talking, the woman who has been, bringing us our beers and whatnot, she came up and she started speaking French to Jean Benoit, to Jean. And being the cultured man that I am, I had no idea what she was saying, but I did hear her say cuvee, and then John's like, nods, yes, whatever. And then she shows up with this 8-year-old bottle, and they put them in these baskets. They lay them down in a basket because the sediment, they store these bottles on their side. So the sediment is on the side of the bottle. So they put that down in the basket. So it's a way of not rousing all of that yeast as you serve. Dude, she brings this 7-8-year-old goose out. It's no joke, right? The whole time I'm taking audio notes on all these beers and stuff like that. And man, I'm not gonna lie, being a sucker for history, loving those beers, loving the culture, like the whole atmosphere of the whole thing, man, it was super overwhelming. And so now, and they give us this free bottle because we're there appreciating and loving what they have, right? And so I'm not gonna lie, I go like off to the side, and I have my little glass, and I'm smelling it, and I'm talking into my phone, and I am crying. Okay. And in the meantime, my two buddies are up at the counter like buying like t-shirts and, whatever, like glasses, and they sold cheese, all sorts of things. And this woman says to them, they're like, What is he doing?" And they explained to her that, I was taking notes on all their beers and that I come from, flew over the ocean to be there. And now, like, the whole thing, like, was so overwhelming for me. I'm weeping into this gorgeous 8-year-old glass of goose, right? So, anyways, I have my moment. I take my notes, and I go up to the counter, and I'm just gonna get like a wedge of cheese and like a couple of their glasses. The cheese that's like washed in their beer. And she packages it up for me and whatever. And we're bantering a little bit, talking a little bit. And she slides the stuff across, and I say, "How much?" And she goes, "Nothing." And I'm like, What do you mean?" And she goes, "For you, nothing." And it was because, I mean, this is the cheat code for Cantillon, right? Fly there, drink all their beer, cry over it, and then they give you things. But that was very touching. That was very cool. And then we started talking. I asked her how long she had worked there, and she put her hand out low like this. So, because she had worked there since she was a kid, she's Jean Benoit's sister. It's their family's place, and it just made the whole thing so beautiful, man. It was really an amazing trip. Um, I'll probably another point I'll talk about West Vleddern and what that little pilgrimage was like going out to Pope French. One of those things you just don't forget. But anyways, that's that. That's my little snippet. Go cry in Belgium story and get some free cheese. So cheese was good. All right, let's start digging into some more questions here. Nick on Instagram wants to know, what malt or malts do you typically try to avoid using and why? I'm going to take this question in this direction. What malts don't I use anymore? Man, by and large, I don't use crystal malt. I remember when I was getting into home brewing, I mean, even when I was brewing as a pro, and I mean, there is always some Crystal 40, some Crystal 60, maybe some 80. And I really loved getting those British maltsters for those, right? That depth of flavor, that range of color that you get with them. They're just great. And I realized the other day, I don't use those malts anymore. I mean, by and large, there might be a couple beers that I do, and this might be specific to my situation, but I think it's something that's going on a little bit trend wise. I think people are using less crystal malt in their beers. I don't know if you see that where you are. What I can say by me is, I don't know. There's a product that I use from Malt Europe, and it's their crystal wheat. It's a 3 Lovibond. I use that in a handful of beers. I essentially use it as simple syrup in a cocktail. It's just some straight residual sugar, I feel, and so to pull up residual sweetness. But man, I mean, of my standards, I don't have any true crystal malt in any of my lagers. I do have some caramel type malts that in really small percentage would go into like my amber lager. I believe in Airborne Amber Lager for us. I believe that's Cara Amber in there, and so that is a caramel type malt. But I mean, shoot, most everything is more on the toasty, chocolatey base malts, and then on into base malt side. I'm not using a lot of it, and you know, I do think it is just a little bit of a trend thing. I was talking to my malt rep from Country Malt, and he was echoing the same thing. I mean, if you think about IPA right now, if you're making a hazy IPA, I doubt, I could be super wrong, but I doubt you have 10% Crystal 40 in it, or Crystal 60, or Crystal 80. I mean, Crystal Malt used to be a staple in IPA. and that's kind of trended out of style a little bit. I mean, there's still beers made like that. But by and large, I think it's just one of those things. I think people get really excited about one particular thing. When it was like the arms race with bitterness with IPA, man, and you just have these big blowout IPAs, strip your palate out, bitterness and everything like that. I think things tend to ebb and flow. It tends to come back more to center. But yeah, I mean, as far as stuff that I don't use a lot, I don't use a lot of crystal malt anymore. And that might change based on consumer preferences, because listen, I mean, if we're doing this for a living, consumer preferences matter. I'm sorry, on some level, right? Consumer preferences matter on some level. Let me click something here real quick. Do you believe in stacking crystal malts? September and June, do you believe in stacking crystal malts for depth, or just add up the 30, 40, 60 and use a special B? I'm when it comes to things like that, that's a great question. I do like to layer up. If I'm going to make a big Munich forward beer, I like to have Munich 1 and Munich 2 from Weyermann in there. There's not a huge difference between them, but dude, I like stacking up where you can without kind of throwing kitchen sink at it. That idea of layering up crystal malt for me, I absolutely love, and it feels so nostalgic for me. I remember when I was first getting into brewing, reading that Brewing Classic Styles, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. If you're brewing at home, and dude, even if you're brewing on the pro side, man, and you want to know how a classic beer style tastes, freaking take that recipe and brew it, and you're going to be pretty darn in the pocket. You might want to tweak it one way or another, but that book is no joke, and the recipes in that book are an amazing starting point. But Jamil, one of the authors of that book, always talked about kind of layering those in. So if you're going to use, if you're going to have like a pound, let's say, if you're going to have a pound of Crystal 60 in a beer, maybe grab half a pound of 40, half a pound of 80, and like try to create an arc of flavor, right? Nothing to where you're just smashing it over the head and going 20% or whatever, and fitting them both in there. But yeah, man, I do like doing that, and I do that with even beers that I'm not utilizing crystal malt. I think it's a really great way to go. So anyways, yeah, pretty cool. I like that. So back to Nick's question. I mean, trying to avoid, the one thing I will say though is, and I've kind of, I don't know, I love the stuff that I get from Weyermann. But sometimes you hear people talk about some malts that you can get from overseas or whatever that potentially have like oxidation issues, a little age on them. That may very well be. These days, the stuff I'm using that's continental from Europe, it's the Weyermann stuff, and it's fresh and it's awesome. And if you don't like Barca Pills, you can fight me, because I love it. I was just professing my love for Barca Pills today on the gram. Nick, man, I hope that answers your question. Actually, Nick has another question. Thoughts on using acidulated malt? Do you use it? If so, what percentage and how often? The idea here is, with using acidulated malt, at least one of the primary uses for this, you guys, is it is a way to adjust your pH of your mash. Okay. So, kind of rule of thumb of that is, if you can get 1% of your grist, or total grain that you're using in your mash, if you substitute 1% of your base malt for acidulated malt, that will drop the pH of your mash 0.01. And so you can just kind of do the math from there. The idea behind that is being able to adjust mash pH without just using food grade phosphoric like I do, or lactic like some other people do. Um, you can do that. It is like a Reinheitsgebot thing, and that's great. I personally think this falls into a region of do you like doing it? Like, if that's awesome to you, knock yourself out and do it, man. That's great. Um, I use phosphoric acid because it's cheaper, it's smaller to store that than a sack of grain. I would rather be measuring out that liquid than I would more grain. And it's just personal preference for me. When you use food grade phosphoric, it does tend to be a bit more flavor neutral. I think that sometimes when using elevated levels of lactic acid to be making pH adjustments, um, there is the potential for being able to catch a little bit more flavor from lactic acid. I read something recently where they were talking about the compounds in the phosphoric acid, and I am not a chemist, but the compounds in the phosphoric acid are actually more akin to some of the other compounds familiar in beer. So that might have been either on like some of the Brauchkaiser stuff, or maybe even stuff from Brew and Water. I was digging into some of their blog posts there. But do what you enjoy, though, man. I worked at a spot though that has used acidulated malt, and the guy just really liked the practice, man. Like, I feel like when I was brewing at this, like when I was brewing at Rockford, and I was brewing for Jeff there, the head brewer brewmaster there, super nice dude. Like Jeff, like Jeff, like brews like he feels that process. You know what I mean? And I think there's something to that. Like he enjoys the process, the ritual of it, and that's awesome. I think we all have to maintain some element of that. But yeah. So, anyways, I did see point oh 0.01 September and June. But we can try to fact check that. That was a thing I read off the internet, but I might be a point off on that to answer your question from the chat. Are there any beers you've had lately that have given you inspiration or a desire to recreate that beer? Yeah, man, I'm super fired up right now about lager. It's the reason I'm gonna drink two up the hills tonight. Um, I really want to chase some of those beers I was drinking in Austin. Some of those Austin Beer Garden beers, the Pilsners down there, the Helles down there. I'm the primary thing I'm tweaking right now is I'm really going to try to be pushing out my cold storage phase on my lagers up to 7 weeks. Also, I kind of go back and forth with this, kind of starting something new. So I was pushing chloride on a lot of beers. I'm gonna try this up the hill right now is currently a little bit more chloride heavy, but I think I'm gonna make it a little bit more even. I'm gonna kind of shoot for 100 parts calcium, chloride, and sulfate in this newest batch that I'm gonna be doing with it, and it's just fine point stuff, man. I would say that's kind of what I'm working on right now. But yeah. Again, if you are just joining us, welcome to the live stream. Adam makes beer. This is the one for August. It's a good month. I've heard, according to what some social media, uh, you know, retailers are telling me, it's Leo season. I'm a Leo because I care about astrological signs. Um, what else? Grainhound, my man Grainhound from Discord. If you could answer hop utilization calculations when scaling up batches from homebrew size to 7 barrel, I think that's a great question. And if I'm remembering correctly, my man Grainhound is using Beersmith. I would lean on that, man. It sounds like he has potentially a collab coming up with somebody on the pro side. Um, But either way, what you want to do is you want to input the all the parameters that you can for the larger system that you're going into, that you're going to be scaling up to, and it does a pretty good job of scaling for you. I'm really not gonna lie. Like I would say this. Um, I would look at just run your percentages the way you normally would with your grain. It's possible that that brew house is going to be a little bit more efficient than yours, but talk to the person. I'm talking about it in a collab way right now. But if you're scaling from one thing to another, kind of shoot middle of the road. If you're a little high, you're okay. If you're a little low, you're fine too, right? Um, but hop utilization is the tricky one for people that are going from smaller batch sizes to larger. And the primary function really is it's having alpha acids in that wort really above, like, dude, really 160. It's going to happen slower. It's going to happen slower. Utilization is going to drop at lower temps. But the longer that wort is over those temps, you're gonna keep producing IBUs, isomerized alpha acid in those beers, and especially if you're doing, your 20-minute edition, 10-minute edition, your whirlpool, and really for me, I mean, when I whirlpool hop a beer, that those hops are going to be hot for a long time, man. It takes a while. It's 45 minutes probably by the time my whirlpool settle, maybe even a little bit more, and then run into a fermenter. So that bitterness is going to continue to be generated. That said, though, if you get solid specs plugged into Beersmith, man, that stuff works well. That stuff works well. I would target, like, if you have a 30 IBU beer, and let's say for argument's sake you can get 25 bitterness units in at 60. That's great. That's gonna be pretty reliable. And maybe it's one of your later additions that might generate more bitterness. So just look at it and say, well, okay, I'm expecting 5 IBU from my 20-minute edition. Once you build out your larger scale profile in there, per the larger size equipment, put that hop addition in, and then just build it for 5 IBU. Don't worry about scaling up the size, and it'll probably adjust quite well for you. So yeah, I think that's that. Big Leo energy. You better believe. Am I an alcoholic? I would say no, Kelly. I to be honest, I probably at work over the course of a week, I probably drink about 10 ounces of beer. It's almost comical for me when I do these things because I will have 2 beers when I do this. But I oftentimes don't drink at home. I've got a big family. I've got stuff to do, and then also, like, I'll be completely honest. Um, I can't afford to drink calories. I get heavy, and then I feel bad about myself. So yeah, that's that. Behind the veil. Um, what else? Bringing a little bit of that big Leo energy. Old crispy boy on Instagram wants to know about best roasted grains for black IPA and techniques in using it. I think what you're going to find, black IPA tends to be one of those beers where you can take a base IPA recipe and then take like a dehusked roasted malt, whether that is, I'm always partial to those Wireman products, whether it's Carafa Special. You want the special when you're talking Carafa because it is the dehusked, and it's going to be that husk that brings a lot of the more aggressive roasty flavors and potentially on into acrid flavors, right? So with the dehusked, you can get a smoother roast character, a more subtle roast character. Let's make the maybe say, like, think about, like, maybe the difference between cold brew and not, right? So maybe something a little bit smoother like that. Um, so yeah, I would recommend dehusked for that. Plug it into your computer, into your software, and just make that color as dark as you want it to be and really don't push beyond that, I would suggest. Um, and techniques in using it, I know old Gordon Strong used to say, like, top your mash with it. So add it late to the mash. I know some people will side steep it, and I know of even some pro breweries, and I've heard that Guinness actually does like a side steep with its roasted grains, and then that is added back in. That's all unconfirmed, but um, those are options too. Sometimes those things are done because those aggressively roasty malts, they can kind of wreak havoc on the pH levels in your beer, and they might take you out of a range that you want to be in. So yeah, man, maybe like topping your mash. Maybe when you get ready to sparge, you can spread those out over the top, and you'll probably pull some color, maybe with pulling less astringency out of those dehusk grains. That's what I would look for. You could also use things like roasted wheat products. I know people have roasted rye. There's all sorts of huskless roasted products out there now. And man, I would say if you can get into your homebrew shop and taste up those boys a little bit, right? Don't get aggressive and like throw the whole thing in there, but get a kernel in there, and work it around. You might be able to find some. To me, eating those things is like just eating espresso beans. So I mean, if you can enjoy that, yeah, that'll be good. That's what my suggestion would be, though, man. Maybe topping the mash, throw it in the mash, top the mash, sparge over it, maybe even a separate side steep. I know I've had friends that have just made like a killer IPA, and then they've gone with they even have like the liquid Carafa 2 special. I forget what that's called, Sinmar, which is basically just a malt food coloring, a malt derived. It's a super dense roasted wort, roasted wort, dark wort made out of Carafa special that you can just add to a beer, man. So yeah, there's different ways to slice it to kind of take that harsher edge off of those things, so you can have a dark beer that's not drinking truly stout like. So yeah. um oh, you guys are all nice. Let me hit a couple more questions that I have over here, and then I'll jump back over to chat for some questions. Ryan Flipalicious on Instagram. I think I just copy and pasted that. I think I would have remembered typing in the word Flipalicious. Why would someone use pills in a New England style IPA and not Maris Otter or two row? These are my thoughts. First of all, Maris Otter is a clear one. Maris Otter is a character forward base malt. It's a little bit darker. A lot of base malts you're going to see. Pills can be 1.5 to 1.7, maybe 2 Lovabond. Your two row is probably still going to be around 2 plus or minus a little bit. But dude, Maris Otter, you can get Maris Otter, 3 to 4. Twice as in, that's not like insane, but it's twice as much. And those that malt has a lot more character in my mind. We're talking about, on the scale of white bread, right? But they have a lot more character, the toastiness, the nuttiness, the whole thing, the biscuity thing. So Maris Otter is pretty flavor forward for base malt. So that's why I would kick Maris Otter out of that group. Um, I think you can use both two row and pills for New England style IPA. I personally really enjoy using pills for it because it is the palest, at least of the malts that I'm getting, the maltsters that I'm using. It is the palest, and I'm very sensitive to the idea of putting too much color into a New England style IPA and then coupling that with the haze that can come with that style, getting something that looks murky, right? Um, a golden beer with a ton of haze in it, it looks gross, man. It looks like puke, right? So if you can make a really pale beer and then have some haze in it, like it's a bit more appetizing to me. That's just, personal, whatever. I'm not saying you can't make a great New England style beer with Maris Otter, but I think in general, the other point too is I think New England style IPA and I would argue sometimes IPA in general is from my preference is a style that you want the malt to get out of the way of the hops. Um, if you can taste malt in my IPAs, nuanced malt character, I'm dropping the ball. That's not what I'm trying to do with them. Depending on what type of IPA or whatever it is, I usually want dense, saturated, hot flavor and aroma, just enough bitterness, pith, kind of from that intense citrus thing to balance those out. And dude, that's really it, you know. So yeah, I think that's the malt approach with New England style beer is kind of putting the more flavor forward more characterful malts aside, so you can spotlight hops. What you do want in that grist though is to have that soft pillowy. So that's why sometimes you'll see wheat used in there, and you'll see oats, all these things to kind of lift the body and the softness of those beers from a grist perspective. So thanks, Ryan. Also from Keats73 on Instagram, how much wheat oats, speaking of wheats, right? How much wheat or oats are too much for a hazy? That's super interesting. I would recommend Scott Janish's book called The New IPA. That book is no joke, and I'm going to go off the top of my head here. So I can, try to maybe correct this later or something, but this is going to be really close to this. You hit a point of diminishing returns with adding that we're going to lump together flaked product, usually typically oats, but sometimes people do wheat as well. But and I've done flaked rye, different things like that. But a flake product and wheat, you generally want to be somewhere between 20 and 25% of those hazy type grists being made up of wheat and or flaked, usually a combination. And interestingly, it seems that if you start pushing protein levels over that, you can end up creating a situation where you get a clearer beer in the finished product. It seems as if by pushing more and more protein into those, you could create a situation where that protein is gonna connect up, is gonna essentially flock together, form larger particulate, and then potentially fall out of solution. So yeah, it's a fine line, and I think what Janice suggests is kind of capping around 25%. I'm sure there's some people that are doing higher percentage and are doing great beers with it, but it's just kind of a rule of thumb that I follow. Wheat oats are too much for. Okay, so we did that. Let me jump over to chat real quick. Okay, so thank you, a freelance gamer. I appreciate that. Can you speak to alpha and beta amylase and where they are and why they may be desired to a specific beer style? So the question basically hinges on the primary enzymes that are acting during the mash and creating long chain and short chain sugars. Long chain sugars are unfermentable and will leave more body in your beer, and potentially some sweetness as well. And then short chain sugars are more easily fermentable, leading to a drier beer. But you know what? I'm actually going to that. It's a great question, but I'm going to put that one on hold because I'm going to want to brush up on the specifics on that. But yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to speak wrongly. It's one of those things that has slipped my current in-house library right now as far as beer knowledge goes. But that's a good one, and we can come back and talk to that later. Dualistic Ales and Lagers on Instagram ask, what liquor to grist ratio do you use and does it vary by style? So first off, what is liquor to grist ratio? It's liquor meaning brewing water. It's the word for brewing water. How much hot water do we use based per pound? There's different ways to do this. Some people weigh the water. They do pounds of water or, you know, whatever a metric pound is. Um, People do liters, obviously, different things like that. But I do quarts per pound because it's what I came up doing, and it's what I'm still doing now. It kind of depends. There's some beers, some of my smaller beers, I like to. A lot of my German beers at this point, you know, my beers that are going to be 12 Plato 1048 beers. I am doing about 2 quarts per pound. I do lower that when I'm doing larger beers because I don't have as much space in the mash tun. But yeah, in general, that's what I'll do. Um, Anywhere from 1.5 quarts to 2 quarts. But I am doing that specifically 2 quarts per pound for my, you know, a roughly 5% lager type beers. I will tweak that around. Like if I am doing, like if I'm doing half batches, I'll push that liquor to grist ratio up and dial it in to where I get the exact amount of work that I need for the whole thing, just based off the initial strike. I'll do stuff like that, but yeah, time to open up the last beer. What else? My man Boozy Scientist on Instagram. Tura or Pilsner for lagers? And what makes the clearest beer? So yeah, let's talk about this, man. There's a lot that goes into beer clarity. Some people really struggle with it, and some people it seems to come very easy to. There's a lot of different things that can come into play there. Cold beer. Um, Water profile plays a role. Yeast health, levels of calcium in the water, different things like that. Tons of different stuff. The way you're storing it, the temperature you're storing it at, a lot of different things. I do know they even sell some malts that are specifically like supposed to be like super clear malts. To kind of jump away from this, I will say I have been playing with Clarity Firm, Brewers Clarex. It's kind of sold as a gluten reducing agent. I have messed around with that a little bit. I have 2 lagers that I'm going to be tapping in a couple weeks that I do have in keg right now. We took a really nice, long, traditional lager with them. I feel really good about them. I did use Brewers Clarex, and bro, they were bright. They're beautiful beers, man. It's cool. One's a fest beer called Panzer, and it's like kind of like that super helles, kind of a little bit closer to golden, a little bit more malt flavor in that beer. A little firm bitterness in the back end too, not pills like or anything like that. And then kind of this beer that's kind of like a between like an Oktoberfest and a Bock beer, just something to be a little bit different, you know. But Bri, I used that Brewers Clarex on that, man, and they look golden. I mean, not golden, that they look good. It's a nice feeling when you get that. So I see why you know, Boozy Scientist wants that clear beer, man, because it's beautiful. I mean, there's something to it, man. There's something to it. It just looks refreshing. Um, so I don't think it's Tura or Pilsner for lagers. For me personally, if I'm making a traditional German beer, I'm going to be using German Pilsner malt. But I mean, if you're making like American hybrids, you know, like some, you know, like a hoppier American pill, something like that, feel free, man. You use domestic pills, use domestic 2-row, blend them, do different things, try it out, see what you like with it. right? Just make sure you like the taste of that malt. Um, but yeah, I almost feel like it's not so much an issue of what malt. It's more about, uh, and I believe you're brewing at home. It's more about getting that beer really cold and then finding it at that temperature. That's my experience with that. I would rack into, I would crash my fermenter, and then get it really cold, like low 30s. You want it below 38 because when whatever temperature you find at, the colder the temperature is, the more that particulate sticks together and makes big pieces. The closer to higher the temperature of that beer, the more those particulates don't create large pieces that can be pulled out. So if you're finding at 35, anything above 35, you could have some haze again until it warms up. Different things like that. So yeah, get it nice and cold and fine it really cold. That's what I used to do. I used to transfer into a keg onto gelatin at like 33 degrees, bro, and I had clear beer the next day. It was awesome. But yeah, anyways, I would look more on the fining tip, or even checking out like Brewers Clarex. So yeah, that would be my thought on it. I will do that one. I have a question from my girl Maggie from Discord. You're gonna want to. She's got some exciting things coming up. Proud of the girl. Maggie from Discord. How would you explain the difference between a quality beer and beer quality? Kind of like this question. I was talking to her today about it. To me, a quality beer is something, and this is my take on this, right? So, everybody can deal with that. Beer in a glass. I'm drinking it. It tastes good. Quality beer. Okay. It's balanced. It's refreshing. Um, that's a quality beer. But beer quality is different. If I take that same beer, and I sit on it for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, is it going to be gross by the time I get back to it? Right? Like, is it not shelf stable? Um, can it not, withstand sitting in a package warm for a little while? Different things like that. I think that's the difference, between those two different ways of saying it. The difference between a quality beer and beer quality. Quality beer is, yeah, something tastes good right now. Um, uh, yeah, quality beer is something that tastes good right now, and beer quality is speaking more to the technical side. How long is this going to last? And flip side is how repeatable is this, right? I think it was Garrett Oliver who at one point was talking about, like, you not being able to make the same beer twice isn't artisanal. It means you suck as a brewer. It's not a direct quote, but very close. I like that one, like, in some ways. And listen, dude, that's great. If you want to do your rustic thing where you're throwing, three hay bales into your stainless steel mash tun with a stainless steel false bottom, and you're straining your wort through that, and then you're running your wort down, a log that's split in half, and you carved a channel out of it with some stone that you sharpened down by smashing the stones up in the quarry or whatever. Bro, do what makes you happy, right? But I completely lost my train of thought on that. But yeah, I mean, like, if you like doing those rustic things, whatever, that's great. But a brewer should be able, from a technical standpoint, to repeat a beer, right? Because it means that you're tracking process and everything like that. Some people just aren't process people, and some people are really process people. But yeah, that's kind of the other element of quality. So yeah, Let me jump over here real quick. Mathtronic said in relation to that, a way I like to think about quality is the beer tastes the way it tastes because the brewer intended for it to taste that way. If the beer tastes different than the brewer intended, then it's not good quality. Yeah, man. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there too. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, one wandering barstool brewing on Instagram asked the question: when working with grain, do you use percentages or weight? A lot of the recipes that I discuss on the channel, I might do both. I think sometimes I give the actual weight, and sometimes I give percentages. In my mind, the more universal, usable, functional way to discuss that is actually by percentage. So that way, it doesn't matter if you're brewing 5, 10, 11, 3 gallons or 100 gallons or whatever. Those percentages are going to be the same. So yeah, that's personally what I do when I'm talking about grist. I like talking about percentage with people. When other brewers hit me up with questions about a recipe, I try to give them percentages because that way it's an easier way of doing that math, right? Hideaway Brewing Company on Instagram says protein rest, yay or nah? I don't do them. I know there's people that do, and that's great. I know. I'm almost certain that there's one really successful place that makes hef in Michigan, and I believe they've won some relatively big awards for that. I think Cedar Springs Brewing Company has one for Hefeweizen. I believe they're going through all that with that hef, with that protein rest and decoction, and the whole deal. Um, I don't do it. I do single infusion. But again, if you like doing it, do it. Do it. Is it? Will you probably get a different character out of the beer? Sure, you will. You're using a different process, right? The question is it worth it to you um, from an enjoyment standpoint, a labor standpoint? And then the flip side is does the difference in that product, if there is one, um, is it is it does it matter to your consumer? If you're brewing at home and you are the consumer and it matters to you, knock yourself out. If you're doing this professionally and you feel as if that's the product that your customer base has to drink, that's great. But yeah, personally, I do single infusion, and I try to manipulate some of those variables with malt bill. Also, I'll say this: I feel like I have far more things to learn about fermentation, water chemistry, and that whole side of things before I worry about decoction and stuff like that with my lagers. Again, I could be super wrong, but yeah. Um, what else? To Patio Man Brewing on Instagram. Have you used specialty wheat grain? If so, what beer style and thoughts? I'll speak specifically to shout out to Malt Europe. I really like their crystal wheat. It's a 3 Lovabond crystal malt. You get in the bag, it almost looks like because there's no husk, so you can just see that it looks caramely and it's sweet, man, and it's unfermentable. And yeah, it's a product I really like. Pardon me. I mentioned before that I tend to use that as like thinking about cocktails as like a simple syrup, right? As a way of elevating the residual sweetness in a beer, and yeah, so that's kind of one of the things that I'm doing when it comes to specialty wheat Earlier, we mentioned that there are things like midnight wheat, there's roasted wheat products, different things like that. Those are great. Um, you can use those as well. Again, I would say taste, maybe even do like a little mini steep with them, like with a press, with a coffee press, to kind of get a feel for some of those different qualities from some of those different wheat products. But yeah, that's really all I can think of as far as the wheat products go. You'll have like your roasted ones, which I would suggest maybe doing like a little steep with, in a little coffee pot. And then some of the crystal products, which are fun. And in particular, I don't know what else exactly comps to crystal wheat, from Malt Europe, but it's one that I like quite a bit. Quite a bit. Peterson B on Instagram. How do you mill your grain, and what is your gap setting? I've used a few different mills. You're going to see like the really general one, which is it Amco? What is it? It's something, but this big blue one that you'll see tons of people using. I forget the name off the top of my head, but typically what you're gonna have is you're gonna have two rollers that roll in like this. Grain drops in here. Sometimes there's a third roller. Um, in general, though, my mill setting on that is I just use little feeler gauges, like automotive feeler gauges. Pardon me for my yawn. I was up early this morning. The feeler gauges, and I'm usually at a 0.55 gap, and that gets me not a super fine crush, but I personally don't like working with super fine crush. I feel like on some level, yeah, you can powder that thing up and maybe get a little bit more extract, but I feel like a little bit of a coarser crush at the same time can can actually help with laterability, flow through your grain bed, and that's ultimately what we want to be doing. We want to be channeling. I don't want to be running a bunch of water. So if one of these circles is my the surface of my mash bed, and most of my water is running down this side because I have channeling, I'm going to be stripping tannins out of this part. Once I strip the sugars out, I can start pulling tannins, different things like that, undesirables. I don't like that. I would rather go a little bit coarser and know that I'm getting good flow through the entirety of the grain bed. I can even recommend kind of getting a visual too. I've had the little can crank homebrew ones. Dude, run that through and then like look at them in your hands. Make sure you're not seeing, my buddy Andy always calls them old maids, the little spare ones that are uncrushed. Maybe tighten up a little bit if you see some of those coming through. But I will say, I've used some domestic malts from smaller maltsters, and you do need to watch kernel size from producer to producer. When you're using larger manufacturers, you can probably rely on a more consistent level of plumpness out of that kernel. But dude, you take some of the malt that you can get like US grown and malted malt, and then compare it to like Maris Otter, like crisp Maris Otter or something. Maris Otter almost looks like a grape compared to some of the rice shaped things that I've seen on some domestic malts. So yeah. Okay. Is there, Nathaniel, is there a source to get the crystal wheat for a home brewer? Dude, that's a really good question. Um, I would I would just start firing it up on Google. I Everything I know is like the pro side stuff that I get given to me. I think Malt Europe may have some availability from place to place. I feel like either Northern Brewer or More Beer had it. Whether or not they'll have Crystal 3 there, I don't know. So do a little digging on it. And if you can check it out, I think it's worthwhile. It's a fun one. I don't have a ton more questions. I do have I do have one more right here. When you use fruit, what are you using? So if you watch some of the videos we've done over on YouTube, some of the brew day videos, different things like that. When we make Escape, our pina colada beer, that's getting 3 boxes of essentially coconut puree, organic coconut puree, and so we're using all pasteurized, flash pasteurized fruit smoothie, basically puree, right? Um, I like it because it's a relatively clean it's a relatively clean way of handling fruit. It still is fruit. But I will say on top of that, though, every single time I do a beer with fruit in it, you're gonna have natural extract on top of it. I think extract gets a bad name, but I think you got to pair them up. I think you need to use the real thing, and then enhance it a little bit with the extract. If you are fully fermenting out your fruit like I do, I think you're going to lose some nose. If you don't make a really sweet fruit beer, I think you're going to lose some intensity of flavor. So get yourself a nice TTB approved natural extract, man. Feather that in real gently, dude. When I use that stuff, oftentimes I use 10 ounces and 15 barrels. So do the math, 31 gallons per barrel. It's a lot of gallons in there. It's a very, very small amount. It's a nuanced thing, and it lifts to the nose and makes it brighter without potentially having to have the beer be too sweet, potentially cloying, or whatever. But I do think you have to use them both together. That's just me. So there's that. September and June is keeping it real with, is there any direction that the brewing industry is going or has gone that you wish it hadn't? Hazy IPA, NA beer, etc. I think that's a good question. I personally, I was not a big fan of super aggressively bitter IPA. That was never me. I feel like, though, there's kind of two different ways to look in this as like a consumer and as a brewer. And I'm going to discuss it from the viewpoint as a brewer. There's some of the stuff I don't like. Just like, and it's personal preference, man. If your brewery is out there like doing those like those 15% tart beers, and then you're cutting them in half with puree, so you have a 7% puree smoothie beer. That's great, man. It's not my jam. Um, I don't know. It's great that you're doing it. It's great that some people like it. And I do think there probably is, kind of being curmudgeonly aside, I do think there's always something to learn from doing different things like that. There's some tool, there's some skill, there's some switch that's going to flip in your head that's like riding a bike, and there's another time in the future where you're going to need to create balance, and you're going to do it because you've done some of these extreme things. I think that's the plus of some of these experimental side things. um I'm glad that the whole like it's good just because it's barrel aged thing seems to be going away. You actually have to have good beer going into a barrel. At least that's the idea, and build a beer for barrel, man. Barrel's just an ingredient. It seems like when first got back into the industry, it didn't matter what you threw into a barrel, dude. If it was barrel aged, it was all right, right? Um, but no, I mean, I think over time we get really excited about something, take things to the extremes, and then hopefully actually end up like incorporating it, right, and learning how to actually use it in a skilled way. Um, you know, not just using something as a big mallet that you're smashing things with, but have the potential to have the fine hand with it, right? With that little Bob Ross paintbrush, making some pretty little trees. So I don't know. But yeah, for me personally, like those smoothie beers that I see that literally just look like puree in a glass, and like the bubbles are fighting to get through all the fruit pectin. Um, just check your insulin, man. I don't know. That's some of those things seem pretty wild. I'm not crazy about that stuff. But all that being said, man, all this stuff is cyclical. Okay. People get tired of one thing, and I think you're going to see lager stop popping off in the next 5 years, and then that's going to go away. And then maybe it's going to be that 1990s amber ale again. Who knows? All right. But yeah, I mean, it does follow with new ingredients that come out. Sure, that's a big factor with that. But but yeah, I don't know. That's kind of it's kind of how I feel about all that stuff. So, anyways, I'm probably gonna wrap here, you guys. We're at about 90 minutes. And I just made the chat go away by mistake, which I didn't want to do. But anyways, I'll tell you this. Once again, I'm super grateful. I'm super grateful for everybody that wants to log on and chat, people that give questions, people that listen afterwards after I cut these up into little episodes. Yeah, man, it's really touching. It's really humbling, and I've just really enjoyed doing it. So yeah, hope you guys all do well. Keep pushing yourself, man. If you're brewing, stretch, learn something new, try new practices. I know it can be hard on the home side, but I don't know, because you don't always have like the budget to make a lot of beer or something like that. And but yeah, I'll always try to get better with it. Push it. Summer's wrapping up. Be good to yourselves. Be good to your families. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk later. Have a good night.